Summit County really is a microcosm for the entire state of Colorado. Housing is a top priority for local officials, along with road projects and budgeting for a booming population. County tax revenues projected to rise about 6.4% between 2017 and 2018, bringing revenues to about $28 million by the end of this year. And Summit is no stranger to growth. Every season, the local population balloons and shrinks from a year-round population of about 30,000 to more than 100,000 in the thick of holiday season. It's the same kind of incredible growth the entire state has experienced and is now scrambling to handle, but local officials and policymakers have been dealing with it for decades. The county is working with a budget of just under $89 million, and Krystal 93 invited County Manager Scott Vargo to come in and explain where those funds are going and how they'll position Summit County to grow comfortably with the rest of a booming state. Phil Lindeman, Krystal 93 News Director, and I am in the studio today with Scott Vargo. He is the Summit County County Manager, and today we will be talking about the 2018 county budget. Scott, thanks for making time to come in.
Phil, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And wanted to start off at the top. A budget, there would be no budget without funds coming in. And this past year, the county was doing pretty good. Taxes were on the rise. Taxes rose to about $27.9 million. Those are projected for 2018. And that's about 6.5 points higher than here in 2017. So things are looking good across the county.
Yep. So that's general fund revenues. We've got some other enterprise funds and transit, for example. The Summit Stage is a different tax funding source. But yeah, we're seeing an increase. We projected about 2% for 2017. They came in a little over 6% higher than expected, and so that's great. We've still got revenue collection or information to get on November and December, so they come in a bit of a lag, but it's been great so far.
Great. What do you think has been kind of pushing that? Just a healthy county?
Yeah, I think healthy county, people wanting to experience all of the amenities that we've got here in Summit County. And we've certainly seen, and I think that the towns would echo this, that we continue to see increases in activity year-round. And so it's no longer that mud season that we used to experience in May and in October. It's constant.
Yeah, the shoulder season is slowly shrinking, that's for sure. And on top of it, I was looking at numbers from hotel reservations that even hotels are doing well all year round. It's not just the fact that people are coming up here for a day or two and spending a weekend. People are booking entire vacations.
Yep, and we've got beyond the hotels, of course, everybody knows about the issues around short-term rentals. The county is going to dive into that here shortly into the new year and talk about different ways that we might be able to provide some better regulation so that it's not impacting some communities in some negative ways. But that creates a whole new inventory of rooms. And so we're, again, able to accommodate a whole lot more people than we have historically.
Yeah, and I remember hearing about that at the COO breakfast earlier this year in October. They were talking about how it's so new that some of the Destometrics firms are getting into simply looking at short-term rentals because it's a wild west when it comes to tracking that stuff. Well, maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later, but first I wanted to talk about housing. So, outside of the rental market, what's being done at the county level for affordable housing? Because, of course, that is a huge hot-button topic right now.
Yep. So we recognize that is the number one topic within Summit County. Community certainly has identified that for the last couple of years as the biggest issue. We've begun some work in that area. We've got a little under $3 million identified in the 2018 budget to go towards projects. We've got work going on at West Hills, which is a project that's just to the west of Landfill Road as you enter Keystone. There's some development going on right now, about 25 townhomes. We've got that site allocated for another 41 townhomes and small condos. And so we're looking at trying to pull the trigger and have that project moving this spring, summer as well, and building out that site. Mm-hmm. We've contributed about $300,000 towards what's called a LIHTC project, which is a low-income housing tax credit project on the Wintergreen parcel, which is adjacent to West Hills. And that's a project that would be for 40 apartment units, and those have to be between 30% and 60% of the area median income. So that's a pocket of the population that right now does not have a lot of opportunity within Summit County. So we're very excited about being able to help with that project.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, explain Wintergreen just a little bit, because I know that it is a little different. What's the partnership there? Is it between Keystone? Is it between the resort, or is it just simply be in the county?
So Wintergreen, again, there are several parcels. One of those parcels is West Hills. So that's a property that was owned by Vail Resorts that's been deeded over to Summit County. And so Summit County now owns that property and is doing that development with Summit Homes, Compass Homes, to develop some of that project. We've got, again, the other 41 units. We'll determine who we're going to work with on that coming up after an RFP. The rest of Wintergreen is property that's owned by Vail. They have entered into a long-term lease with a developer called Gorman. And Gorman is the group that has now gone out and received this tax credit financing on a portion of that project. That's the portion of the project that the county is partnering with Gorman on. The balance of that is, again, Gorman, and they've got some agreements with Vail Resorts with regards to some seasonal housing, as well as, I think it's 120 units of long-term rental units as well.
Okay, so some creative partnerships happening right there. And is that kind of going to be the standard from here on out, is seeing how the county can creatively partner with towns and even, corporations like Vail to make housing happen?
Yeah, certainly what the county has looked at is what's the best way for us to leverage our funds. And so the more involvement we can have, whether it's through tax credit financing, whether it's through a partnership with a developer, whether it's partnerships with other local businesses and other entities to come in and pool resources, we believe that that's the best way for us to approach the issue. We know that we as the county and towns can't solve the housing problem in Summit County alone. And so we need to be working with local businesses and larger corporate entities, as well as taking advantage of what other state and federal funding might be available to us.
Yeah. Now, this is a little beyond, just solving the issue. What's the general sense when it comes to housing? It is a huge issue, but at the county level, what are people feeling about it? That, man, do we wish that it would slow down a little bit, or is all growth good growth?
Well, I think managed growth is what we've always worked to achieve, and so we want to protect the character of Summit County. We want to make sure that there are still open space opportunities and recreational opportunities for folks that are coming in. We know that there are developable parcels within Summit County, and so trying to identify the best way for those to be developed, and then trying to identify, and we've used the term in the past, land banking land for affordable or for workforce housing projects into the future is something that we want to also be identifying as we go forward. We want to make sure that one of the Board of County Commissioners' biggest mantras is we want people to be able to live where they work and work where they live. And so trying to achieve that is really the big picture goal from a county perspective.
And I remember talking with town of Breckenridge. Rick Holman was saying the same thing. The town's approach to housing is the exact same way, and I'm sure that it's the same at every other town across the county. Now, like you said, when it comes to the land bank, making sure that you do have some property for in the future when it's needed. Anything in the works right now, or anything that the county has its eye on currently? Where can expansion go from here?
Yeah, I would say the biggest piece of property that we have right now that we have land banked is Lake Hill. So that's 45 acres of property between the Dillon Dam Road and I-70.
Good old Lake Hill, yeah.
And so that's a project. We're going to put some money into that project this year as well in 2018. We're going to have some additional traffic study work where we're partnering with the town of Frisco as well as CDOT for that whole interchange around Lake Hill, Lusher Court, Highway 9, and I-70, the roundabout. And so there'll be a project this spring, summer that we'll work on getting some more analysis and some solutions identified for how do we change that intersection to accommodate different growth. We're going to do some geotech work on Lake Hill to try and understand exactly what the property looks like. We'll do some more utility study and some impact analysis with the town of Frisco as well, so we can keep that project moving forward. We're always working with private landowners to try and identify if there's property that might be better if it came into the public's hands. Mm-hmm. We're working with the Forest Service as well in the same way that we worked on Lake Hill, which was a sort of administrative purchase project, but always looking with them on different exchange opportunities. and other ways that we might be able to pull some of those sort of unusual Forest Service properties that are very close into town or county boundaries that are close to infrastructure, to see whether or not any of those make some sense to be exchanged for properties that the county may own that are in the backcountry that would be better served being Forest Service properties.
Yeah, like you were saying, there's just some weird lines drawn on maps on occasion, and sometimes you got to get past those first. Well, and I know that the county has done similar things, not quite with housing, but I remember doing a little piece on the jumbo mine cleanup. That was another instance of the county identifying a piece of land that was, pretty meaningful for cleaning up that area, and worked out a kind of swap with the property owner to make all that happen. So
absolutely. We know that the obligations on some of these properties back in the backcountry where there've been historic mining sites can be troublesome for whoever happens to own them now, and we want to make sure that if we can in some way impact the water quality or the conditions of those sites, that we're involved in those projects as much as we can be.
Great. And moving on from that, like you mentioned, Lake Hill, it's going to take some work, not just not just building plans for the building itself, but also road work. Big things coming for road and bridges with the county this year as well. What is on the budget as far as road work and bridge work?
Yeah, so we've got about just under $3 million. I think it's $2.9 million in for road and bridge construction and engineering projects in 2018. For the past 5 years, that number has averaged about $1.5 million, so almost doubling that number. We've got some big work that continues in Summit Cove, so we've done the two-thirds or so of the project within Summit Cove to do the loop road, where we've done some partnership with the school district, and this past year had a Safe Routes to School grant from the state as well.
Yeah, and that's updating some of the sidewalks and signage and everything else like that around Dillon or around Summit Cove Elementary.
Yep. So expanding the road, adding some shoulders that can serve as bike and pedestrian lanes. The big piece of that project for 2018 will be what we call the causeway, which is the bridge that heads over the creek there in Summit Cove. That's probably the most complex engineering component of the whole project. So our plan is for in 18 to replace that causeway and then do a little bit more work connecting the last stretch to the causeway. And then we'll do some more finish-up work in 2019 and should be finished with Summit Cove. We've got some projects.
I was going to say that's huge news for Summit Cove. The work's been going on there for a while, and it will look totally different. I mean, I remember seeing the project right outside of the elementary school, and it just looks good. It just looks so great. I mean, it really does feel like a neighborhood. Yeah, no, it's great, and we've got some work in 18 where we're going to begin to look at go back to look in Dillon Valley at something perhaps similar. Out in front of Dillon Valley Elementary. So we did some work. That was sort of the first project that the county did to add some bike lanes. So we did that as sort of a loop around the main roads within Dillon Valley. At the time, the school was doing some work on expansion of their facility. It wasn't the right time for us to look at the sidewalk and the connections right in front of the elementary school. But now they're back. They're going to be doing some additional work in Dillon Valley. They've acquired property next door to Dillon Valley Elementary. That's really a gap section of sidewalk within that neighborhood. And so we're going to work with the school district. We'll see whether or not there's some Safe Routes to School money out there that we could get at and try and improve that condition as well for all the students and families that are walking around that neighborhood. Yeah, some neighborhood work going on down there. Now, you said that Dillon Valley was maybe looking, or they had done some work in the past and it just didn't fit into it. How long ago was that?
I'm going to say that was probably 4 or 5 years ago that we added some bike lanes around, I'm going to get the names of the roads wrong, Deer Path and Straight Creek.
Okay, gotcha. So it's something that was started and then kind of stalled and then now get going again.
Yep.
Other big projects, things that might be happening to...
Yeah, road-wise, we're doing some work on Heaney Road, some work on Swan Mountain Road, and some more work on Boreas. And so trying to spread some of the activity around throughout different areas and different corners of the county.
What all will be happening on, like, say, Swan Mountain?
They'll be doing some repaving, some seal work on Swan Mountain. Similar work in Heaney and on Boreas. There's a couple of culverts, and when I say culverts, you think of the little metal tube that's in the road.
Yeah.
We're talking about significant culverts. These are they're almost they're like a precast bridge essentially, and so there'll be one of those in Summit Cove and one of those on Little Beaver Trail in Dillon Valley as well.
Okay.
So a couple areas where we've had just sort of historic issues with how the drainage works and doesn't work. So that'll be big improvements, and those are about $250,000 a pop.
Great. So big projects that you might not even notice until May comes, and the drainage is much better than ever been before.
Yep, that's right.
Fantastic. Now, I said earlier that we were going to kind of circle back to taxes. The county's looking good. Things are looking on the up and up, but underneath the surface, there are some other strange things happening. So the Gallagher Amendment, it came kind of to light again this year when Colorado Mountain College was asking for a ballot initiative to kind of fund them as the Gallagher Amendment was taking funding away. Now, explain real quick what the Gallagher Amendment is and how it affects us here in Summit County.
Yeah, so Gallagher is, you couple that with Tabor, a couple of really complicated constitutional and statutory measures within the state. So Gallagher says that between residential property assessments and commercial and land property assessments, residential shall not be more than 45% of the total collections. So as property values have soared on the Front Range in particular, that ratio has gotten out of whack. And we hadn't seen an adjustment in Gallagher for well over a decade. And then all of a sudden in 2017, we saw that number was going to drop from 7.96% to 7.2%. Now, the fact that we're in Summit County is a bit of a buffer to that impact. So we saw our values go up considerably within Summit County, so sort of mirroring what was happening on the Front Range. Had we not seen the Gallagher adjustment take place, Summit County would have realized about $2 million more in property tax revenue in 2018. So that's $2 million that we would have put towards housing and other road projects, other big capital investments within Summit County. We now don't have those funds.
Wow, $2 million. And remind me, what is the total budget for 2018?
Total budget is just about $89 million.
So $2 million is a healthy chunk.
Yeah.
That's the difference between that and hitting the 90 million mark.
Yep.
How about the future of Gallagher? What could be happening from now on, especially if property values continue to rise and that ratio isn't, fixed?
Yeah, that's a great question, Phil. The fact is, we've been expecting that the next assessment is going to include another drop in Gallagher. We just got information actually yesterday that the state is estimating that number will go from 7.2% to 6.11%. So an even bigger drop than what we saw in affecting 2018. So I did some quick math, and again, the numbers that we have today don't incorporate any of the potential offsetting increase in values, but we're looking at close to a $3 million decrease in property tax collections as a result of that additional drop from Gallagher that we think would come in play in 2020.
Okay, so another $1 million could potentially be lost.
Well, that's on top of the $2 million, so another $3 million.
Yeah. Oh wow. And that's annual. That's annual. That's every single year. So it's not compiling on top. It's $2 million one year, $3 million potentially the next year.
Yep.
Who knows what comes after that?
Yep.
Now Gallagher, it was put in place to protect property owners. Do you feel as though it's doing that? Do you feel as though it's really doing what it was supposed to do?
I think that part of the challenge with Gallagher is it's a statewide number, a statewide value, and in many parts of the state of Colorado, they are not seeing any sort of growth at all similar to what's happening in Denver on the Front Range or in some of our mountain communities. And so it is crippling counties and other municipalities and other property tax funded agencies across the state of Colorado. So if you've got a small fire district, for example, out on the far eastern plains where they're seeing zero growth in property values, residential values, they are now seeing those hits and they're taking the full brunt of them. They don't have anything to offset that. So they're being asked to provide the same level of service or in some cases heightened levels of service and the revenue stream that's coming in is dropping year over year over year.
Wow, and all of that is happening, as you know, I've also been hearing about, we hear so much about the Front Range and the metro area growing. There's also an exodus happening from some of those smaller communities. 30,000 residents across the state left this year, and I'm sure that they're feeling the crunch even more as not only funding goes away, personnel are disappearing as well.
Absolutely.
Here in Summit County, is there any way, has the county ID'd any way to get around this, or is this something that just simply comes down to policy change?
Yeah, right now, it requires a change at the state level in order to affect the mechanics of Gallagher and the mechanics of Tabor. The challenge with the two coupled together, Tabor restricts any kind of an increase in taxes. So as Gallagher mandates that those property taxes decline, the only way for us to recoup those would be to go to a vote of the people under Tabor. So when down the road there's some reason why the property tax ratio should change and the residential side should go up, it can't go up because Tabor says it can't go up unless the people vote on it. And so it allows it to go down, but not go back up.
Yeah, and we all know, of course, when there's a tax issue, chances are high that it's not going to pass unless there's a very strong case behind it.
Yes.
And right now, I don't know, it almost seems, after we saw what happened with CMC, that there's not a strong enough case. CMC was trying to make the education case that they are a part of the community and an educational institution here in the state that's much needed, and it still didn't pass. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the future for there. Finally, on the budget, anything else big, anything interesting that people might be missing if they're not keeping their eyes open?
Wow, that's a good open-ended question. I would say, the other thing that they should be looking at, the county is also putting in some additional dollars towards some of the nonprofits in the community. So we've increased our funding of the Family Intercultural Resource Center. In 2018, we've increased our funding towards High Country Conservation Center. We've added a few more smaller adjustments to some other nonprofits. There's a group now that's called Treetop that is a new and emerging program. It is a child advocacy center that's going to be located over in the community, the BGV Community Center and South Branch Library facility where the coffee shop was downstairs. There'll be now a child advocacy center, and so we've added some funding to that. So the county has recognized that, again, we're seeing growth within the community. We're still seeing challenges around healthcare. We're seeing challenges around housing and around childcare services. So we're trying to provide some support to those local nonprofits that are trying to again, help people to live and work within Summit County.
Yeah, working proactively to really be the full picture, because housing is the thing that people see, but like you said, healthcare, education, food service, even everything like that all fits into the big picture.
Yep, absolutely.
Great. Scott, well, thanks for making time to talk about the 2018 county budget. Looking forward to some of those big projects coming up in the new year.
All right. Thanks very much, Phil. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Scott Vargo, Phil Lindemann on Krystal 93.